Hello, everybody. Welcome along to Sportsbet TV. Paul Alster here with you. Looking forward on a very chilly weekend, hopefully to some action. And I'm going to be suggesting two tips, one at Taunton and one at Haydock. I'm hoping that at least one of the tracks is going to get some racing in and will at least have a little bit of a shout. If you are finding us for the first time, do press the subscribe button just below the screen. It's for free. You can follow my tips and take them into your calculations and decide whether or not you want to go along with my thoughts. Over the 2.5 and more years since we started the service, we're showing very, very good profits. Although fair to say, of late, it's been really fairly quiet. Although last weekend, we did have a good run for our money in Ireland with Dunvegan going very well at 12-1 to be second there, running well and landing as a nice each way bet. The other runner last Saturday was Belagus, who seemed to travel very well until he seemed to sink in the mud after the third last. And that was the end of that, really. Now, talking of mud and weather conditions, earlier today, it appeared that Taunton was the more likely to race and that Haydock was very much in doubt. But just before I've come on, and it's now 10:30 in the morning on Friday, we're getting news that Taunton now are not quite as confident, but that Haydock have issued a more upbeat assessment of whether or not they're going to race, and they're going to look at the track at 8 o'clock in the morning. Taunton, even though the weather forecast suggests it's going to be 5 or 6 degrees on Saturday and only as low as 0 during the night, they're inspecting later today at 4 o'clock. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that both meetings go ahead. So I've permed it a bit, and I have the two suggestions for you. Now, the first is at Taunton. It's in the 2:30, which is a 2-mile, 3-furlong seniors handicap hurdle. The going is forecast soft, 12 runners all being well. And John Joe O'Neill has one here, the likely favourite, Lock's Corner, who is on a hat-trick. Horse clearly in very good form, fairly progressive. He's up £11 for wins in a couple of minor events at Catterick and Ayr. I think he's just got that much more to do here. And we'll soon know if he really is improving very fast or whether he's reached his ceiling. I don't think he's value on what I've seen so far. Now, Joe Tizard has made a very smooth transition since he's taken over the licence from his father Colin at the start of this season. His vision de Flos, a very consistent 10-year-old, second over 2 miles, 5 furlongs in a Fontwell handicap chase last time out, so reverting to timber here. And the last time he ran over hurdles, he was only beaten half a length at Newton Abbot in August, and that was off a £2 lower mark than today. So he won't be too far away, I don't think. Now, Oscar's Moonshine represents Paul Nicholls, whose horses are running very well. Often at this time of year, into mid-January, early February, they do sometimes have a little bit of a dip in form, but that hasn't happened so far this season. And he's got Oscar's Moonshine, who looked to me to be coming to challenge at the second last at Force last time out when he very nearly fell. He absolutely crashed through it. Eventually, he wasn't knocked about. He finished 6th. He's gone down a pound for that. Bold Plan, who reopposes or set to reoppose, was 5th in that race. And I think he's definitely worth a market check, Oscar's Moonshine, because had he jumped the second last, I'm pretty sure he would have been fairly involved in the finish. Now, the standout performer really in the race is the very talented chaser Espoir de Ronnet, who represents Kim Bailey, a really good chaser. He was off nearly 10 months and is a horse who I think he may need this run before he goes back to fences. But he's mixed it with some very, very good horses over the last couple of seasons over fences, and he's off a much lower mark over hurdles. But it might just be that they're using this to get him ready, build him up to Cheltenham in 8 weeks' time. I think the ground, soft as it is, maybe against Hunter's Call, the Ollie Murphy trained runner, whose best performances are on a slightly better surface. He's got cheek pieces on for the first time. While the joker in the pack really here is the Irish raider Take Hall, who's trained by Shark Hanlon. And this horse makes its debut for the yard. Now, they're travelling another horse over, running in another race. And I think that other one is the more likely of Shark's looking at the form, although you just never know, because this horse actually ran well, 9th of 28 in the Paddy Power at the Leopardstown Christmas meeting when he was trained by Seamus Fahy. I just wonder if they're getting a sighter in ahead of the Dublin Festival coming up in a few weeks' time and taking their chance to run when they can. A market move for Take All, I think, will be very significant because the Shark's really shrewd, as we've seen with Hewick. He's done a brilliant job with him. But there's one at a big price here that I think has a proper chance, and it's called Master Debonair, and that's my choice, trained in Wales by Christian Williams and the mount of a promising young conditional rider called Ellis Collier. He claims £7. Now, Master Debonair, as is the same for most of these, has been around a little while in the seniors handicap hurdle. He was trained by Colin Tizard in his early days, and he actually beat the high-class Time Hill in a listed bumper at Cheltenham. He went on to win a Grade 2 novices hurdle at Ascot and then lost his way, had a couple of breathing operations. He joined Harry Fry in March of 2021, and his best run actually for Harry Fry came on this card in this very race last year, where he was only beaten 3/4 of a length by Dorking Boy with the pair clear, and Dorking Boy was getting £11 from Master Debonair. After that, he went on to finish a fair third at Wincanton, did Master Debonair. Now, he joined Christian Williams only last month. He'd been off 8.5 months, and he looked as if the run was needed, fading from the third last on his reappearance race, in that race in which Bold Plan was 5th, and the clumsy Oscar Moonshine eventually finished 6th. Now, Master Debonair was never really at the races that day, but I think it was a case of Christian Williams getting a feel for the horse, who hadn't run for a while. He'll be better, I think, for the outing. Interesting, he's going up against both Bold Plan and Oscar's Moonshine again, so they're not trying to have a crack at those two. He's gone down £3 in the weights as well, and when you factor in his conditional rider's £7 claim, the fact that he's back to the scene of his very best run last season, indeed his very best run in the last 3 years, I think you have to think that he's going to go well. With the claim, he's £12 lower than his very narrow defeat in this race last year. And it's also worth noting that Christian Williams won this very race with limited reserve in 2020. So one way or another, I think Master Debonair will run well. Now, the only firm up early are William Hill's, who tend to give up the early tissue prices. And last night, he was a 22-to-1 shot on the tissue with Hills, was Master Debonair, but they've cut him to 16-to-1. 16-to-1 is available each way. And I think he'll run well, Master Debonair, and I think he's one you should take a look at Taunton in the 2:30. Now, originally, I thought Taunton was the one that was going to go ahead and that Haydock was going to fall by the wayside, but now it's looking 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. So I have a selection for you at Haydock, but you'll have to wait till the last race there. Now, it's going to be heavy ground, and that heavy ground will have really cut up by the time the 3:40 takes place on Saturday, a 2-mile handicap hurdle. So you really do need a horse that is proven in heavy ground, because at Haydock, when it's heavy, it really is, bottomless. We've all got experience of watching horses absolutely just almost walking home up the long Haydock running. And there'll be quite a few horses that will struggle in the conditions. Now, the early guide from Hills has given it 4-to-1 the field for Artur Duderi for the Skeltons, who, of course, are having just a wonderful seasons, and Saturdays really are their days. This horse was second last time out at Exeter over 2.25 miles. That was on his handicap debut of a mark of 117. He ran perfectly well. Problem is, that was good to soft ground, and here it's heavy. And he hasn't yet proven that he can handle such conditions. He's a young horse, and we'll know one way or another whether he is up to it. One horse who will handle the ground is the Alex Hales trained Gardner, who won at Leicester last time out over very nearly 2 miles in heavy. And he's now first time out in a handicap here off 113. The ground is actually ideal for him. It was a novices hurdle he won last time out. It is different when you're taking on seasoned handicappers, and that's my question mark about Gardner. And then Lucinda Russell, who's been having a good season, has a horse called There Is No Doubt. Now, this is an ex-Irish horse who won on heavy ground in Ireland for previous connections. But he also won last time out at Kelso on heavy ground. And that was earlier this week. They're turning him out again very quickly under a £7 penalty. You'd always be just a horse might bounce with 2 runs in heavy ground within a week. But obviously, Lucinda, who's a great judge, feels the horse is ready to go again. So I think that could be the big danger to my selection. And my selection is one of the outsiders of the party again. As you know, I'm always looking to assess horses really before looking at the odds. So I'm not influenced by the bookmaker's opinion or the opinion of their market makers. And when I went through this race, I thought this horse would be single figures, really. But he's not. He's a big double figures, and his name is Luna Jet. Luna Jet is trained by Michael Molyneux and is the mount of Harry Cobden. Now, he's a 9-year-old. He's won 7 times on the flat, including twice on heavy ground. He's particularly effective when the mud is flying. Indeed, I haven't written it down, but if memory recalls, I think he's only once been unplaced on heavy ground on the flat in about 5 attempts. Now, he's had 7 runs over the years over hurdles, and he's yet to win. But he has run 1 or 2 decent races. But the point that jumped out at me when I was looking at this horse's form is that for a horse who is proven as being very capable, indeed prefers to really get his toe in, over hurdles, he's only ever run on good ground and good to soft. So he's never really had the conditions he really revels in. Now, he's come down the weights in the few runs he's had over hurdles, having not won. And last time out, he was only 4th of 5 in a race at Doncaster in November. But once again, the ground was probably, in my view, a little bit quick for him. And piecing 1 or 2 things together here, he has his ground. They're putting a hood on him for the first time, which is interesting for a 9-year-old. So that could make a difference. But most eye-catching of all is the fact that Harry Cobden takes the ride. And looking back over the records, he's never ridden before for Michael Molyneux. So Michael must have got on the phone and said, you know, I'd like you to ride this horse. This is what I'm assuming. I think he's going to run well. You wouldn't turn to a top jockey to ride a horse for you if you think it's going to run badly. So given all those factors, when I went through this race, I thought maybe 9 or 10 to 1 would be about the mark. But looking at William Hill's early prices, they put him up at 28 to 1. Now, maybe they're right and I'm wrong. It has been known, you know, particularly of late. But I think it's worth a tickle at 28 to 1 each way. 4 places offered by Hills. It'll be interesting to see how the market shapes when the other firms go up. So Luna Jet is the second of my selections for you for this week. Let's hope they both get to run at Haydock and Taunton, or at the very worst, one of the 2 meetings does go ahead and we get some decent jumps action to watch on Saturday in Britain. So that's it for this weekend. I wish you, of course, the very best of luck, and I shall be back same time next week with more thoughts on the weekend's racing. But for me, Paul Alster, for now, I'll say goodbye. Take care. Stay warm.